Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Nau mai, haere mai, welcome to this midday session of the Early Childhood Seminar Series. We'll begin our time together with a karakia. Me inoi tātou. Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa ponamu te moana, hei huarahi mā tātou I te rangi nei. Aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou I a tātou katoa, haumi e, hui e, hae ki e. Thank you for joining us for today's presentation by Professor Mary Benson McMullen from Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana, USA. In response to the time difference between the US and New Zealand, Professor Benson McMullen is generously joining us on her Sunday evening. We're delighted to have her with us to share her work around fully embodied play as support for learning, development, and well-being in the first years, a topic I know which is of great interest to our early childhood community. If any questions arise for you during the presentation that you would like to ask Professor Benson McMullen, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and she'll respond to them at the end of her presentation. You can also use the chat function throughout the presentation to connect with each other and the panelists. After the seminar, a recording will be available on our Early Childhood Seminar Series YouTube channel. I will now pass over to Dr. Maria Cooper to welcome and introduce Professor Benson McMullen. Kia ora, Maria.
Thank you, Justine. I get the lovely opportunity to introduce a colleague of mine. So Professor Mary Benson McMullen is Professor of Early Childhood Education at Indiana University, which I have since learned is one of the largest and oldest universities in America. Indiana University has been Mary's academic home for the last 30 years, following her former role as an early childhood teacher of infants, toddlers, and young children. Mary's research interests include infant toddler care and education, growth, development, and learning in the first years, and pedagogies of care across cultures and contexts. As I mentioned, Mary is also a research colleague of mine, which allows me to speak with confidence on her strong research skills, her theory and practice connection, her ongoing emphasis on the well-being of babies, their families, and teachers, and her genuine care and respect for others. So on behalf of the Early Childhood Seminar Series at the University of Auckland, Mary, it is our delight to have such an esteemed scholar and colleague join us for this seminar. Tēnā koe, Mary, no mai, haere mai, ki tēnei hui. Welcome to our space, which is now your space. We are honoured to have you with us. Kia ora, please come forward, Mary.
Kia ora, and thank you all for coming. And Maria, thank you so much for that marvelous introduction. I hope I do you proud. And it's late in the evening for me, so my apologies if I seem tired. I'll try not to. I'll try to be peppy and strong. So I have just divided this talk that I'm going to do tonight or this afternoon into three main sections. And I start with an introduction in which I provide a background for everybody to help us get on the same page in terms of different terms I'll be using, different ways of expressing myself. And the second part of the introduction, I want to go over my beliefs and perspectives as it relates to fully embodied care and holistic attention to the development, learning, and well-being of very young children. I'll use terms like infants and toddlers, but basically, or very young children, but basically I'm talking about babies, those under the age of 3. So in the second part, I'm going to focus on your role. Those of you in this audience who are fortunate enough to spend your days, day in and day out, working with very young children and their families. I applaud you. I've done it. I loved it. I still like to get back in those spaces. And finally, in the third section of this talk, I suggest a way to plan for fully embodied care, fully embodied play experiences for these very young children. I show you some examples and use some guides for planning. And then in the very end, I want to create space, just a few short moments for you to reflect and consider what I've said. And then I will invite you to give me your thoughts and questions as well. So let me start by addressing three challenges that I see facing very young children today. And although I'm speaking from an American viewpoint or American perspective, I bet many of you, these problems and challenges will resonate with you as well. So I call this the challenges of being a baby today, but it could also be titled, I played with this, Why I Became an Advocate for Play in the First Years. Each of these different challenges I present reveals a danger when we focus too much on the adult agenda. See, there's that 8 o'clock at night thing coming through for you. An adult agenda. These adult agendas have very little regard for the very young child. They do not address their needs, their preferences, their well-being. So the first problem that I speak about is what I call the hurried baby. In 1981, a psychologist named David Elkind wrote a book that was greatly influential to me called The Hurried Child. In this book, he saw children as being forced to grow up too fast and too soon. Both the hurried child notion and my idea of the hurried baby focus on the same kind of idea of preparation for the future, what the child will become, not who they are in the moment. It involves a concern about school readiness and competitiveness and pushing down of academics into the earlier and earlier years, even to the point of teaching normal developmental milestones like how to crawl and how to walk. And believe me, I've seen this. And about hitting benchmarks earlier and earlier. My next concern that I address in my work, I believe, is the notion of warehousing babies, or sometimes I call these parked babies. They're parked for the day. We just keep them safe. We keep them clean. We keep them out of trouble, out of danger for the day. But we pay little attention to enriching their lives, enriching their experiences in the here and now. This is such a waste of babies' time. It's such a waste of your time. And I'm speaking in that sense to those of you who do spend your days with babies. You are capable of so much more, and so are they. Another problem that I demonstrate, I think, in this picture is what I call entrapped or contained babies. And that's when you put babies in a device for hours and hours sometimes, usually for your own convenience, not you. I mean, some adults do this. I'm sure you do not. But rather than considering what's best for the child, it's about the adult's convenience. I do acknowledge there's times that you put a child in some kind of container, holder, whatever, to keep them safe, or in the case of that stroller there, to go on a walk. But don't do this in lieu of free experiences and exploration. So my final third problem or challenge, I'm sure, hopefully maybe you haven't experienced this, but we sure do in the United States. It's the problem of what I call virtually ignored babies. Excuse me. You've probably seen some of this. It involves placing babies in front of some kind of screen or device, or perhaps the adult themselves being preoccupied texting or talking on the phone or listening to their music or show on some kind of streaming service. They're on their phone, they're on their iPad, they're constantly turned away. Here again, the adult's focus is not on the child. In fact, that's mostly absent, non-existent. At the very least, their attention is divided. So now I want to share, as part of this introduction, my beliefs and how they support fully embodied play. And I'll define that, so don't worry, you'll get a sense of that. And how what I believe is based upon what I call a holistic perspective. So first, let me start by telling you that the holistic perspective fits within what the US's policy statement called the developmentally appropriate practices in early childhood programs. We count early childhood as birth through age 8, or about, in our schools, 2nd or 3rd grade in the primary years. This developmentally appropriate practice is often shortened to DAP or DAP. It's based upon 2 primary principles. And the first is the notion of the whole child. And I'll tell you more about that in a minute, but it's a holistic perspective. The second major principle is that we speak about all children and all families. This is the inclusive component of DAP. So it also, when we use the term appropriate, that's a highly challenged word. And it is problematic. And over the 40 years now that DAP has been written and produced and revised, it's been changed a bit. So we speak of three types of appropriateness: individuality, where we consider each and every baby as an individual, separate and apart from others. Commonalities, all babies in the group. What do they have, this group of babies that are similar age, similar in terms of how they're exhibiting themselves developmentally? And then their everybody's context, each and every individual as well as the group, their families, communities, and cultures. You in New Zealand, of course, do an excellent job with Tafariki in handling all three of those, but in particular the last one. So I ask you to consider a holistic perspective first and foremost as representing the whole child or the whole baby. This perspective looks at, honors, recognizes the wholeness of the baby, including all areas, all domains that impact their development, learning, and growth. It is essential for individualizing care and understanding each child as an individual. You all know I'm preaching to the choir, but that babies and children develop at their own rates. One that's ahead in small motor might be behind in social emotional, behind at a different point of their development. They're not behind, they're on their own timetable. So a whole child or baby is not just made up of pieces and parts like you see on the left side there of the puzzle pieces. It's made up of a whole. In other words, the living, breathing, feeling child is greater than the sum of their individual parts or areas of development and learning. Think about this when you think about the holistic perspective. Now look there, I've just added the last final piece of the puzzle of that picture, and seeing that whole picture could give you much greater understanding of that child than if you just looked at individual pieces, as you see in the puzzle pieces on the left side. A holistic perspective is family-centered and inclusive of all children and all families. All is capitalized and bolded for a purpose. This is a strengths-based approach where all children and all families bring strengths with them, have strengths. They bring them to, the parents bring that, the adults bring it to the parenting experience and to the partner relationship they form with you in the care and education of their baby. The idea, this idea challenges some conventional notions of readiness. Again, is very in the moment focused. I'm not eschewing the idea that we have to prepare children for the future, but I am saying we need to center our attention in the moment. Also, this notion of readiness, I often say, and I truly believe when we're considering all children and all families, that it is up to us, the early childhood professional, to be ready for each and every child who walks, crawls, or is carried into our places, into our spaces, and their families. So a holistic perspective also upholds children's rights. For this, my beliefs come from the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. I'm sure most of you have heard of that. It's an internationally recognized treaty by everybody but the United States, I'm ashamed to say. It upholds a child's right to play, their right to be happy and healthy in the quote here and now. And along with this right is the right to be well prepared. So I'm not saying that's not important. Don't go away from this talk saying that I don't believe in preparing children. I just strongly stress who they are right there in front of us today. You may notice as I discuss play and development as I go along in this presentation, that I do so using words that I hope reflect the child's point of view. To me, this is an honoring of a child's rights. It's turning the focus back on who they are. And thinking about them as they stand beside me, or they stand in front of me, or I sit beside them. It's the present moment, how they view their own learning, development, and experiences, and how I help see that through their eyes. So a holistic perspective also focuses on being and well-being. So I've told you how I feel about being there in the moment. Let me say a little bit about well-being. Well-being is what I mean when I talk about the here and now and living in the moment in a positive way. So well-being is a little hard to define, although we all seem to know what it means when we talk about well-being. We know it's something positive. And the way I've defined it in several of my writings over the years is well-being is a general state of being and feeling well in terms of physical and psychological health and safety, emotional stability and soundness, and overall satisfaction in activities and relationships. So in much of my research, I talk about 9 senses of well-being, and you can see them obviously I like puzzles. You can see that. In this puzzle image here, it has 9 pieces of a puzzle that need to be present, that I've examined and studied in lots of different situations. It needs to be present for the baby, the child, and the early childhood professional in order for them to have a positive overall sense of well-being, this wellness that I described there. So here's another thing that a holistic perspective considers. It fosters positive lived experiences. Overall positive lived experiences contribute to this overall holistic sense of wellness that I was talking about. And it will be critical in thinking about fully embodied play. So a less well-known term, but a term I really like, is a Vygotskian term, Parashivani. And it's his term for lived experience, if you consider that to be all the thoughts, the feelings, the sensations you're having in a moment, this whole body response to what's happening with you. That is Parashivani. These Parashivani, or I'm not sure if that's the plural, but can be negative and they can be positive. And what we do know from the brain development is that these kinds of experiences become hardwired in the brain, and they can be for the good or for the bad. You know, we want to increase the number of positive Parashivani or lived experiences that the children that we work with and spend our day with encounter for healthy brain development. So it's something that all of us who love and work with very young children need to remember. A holistic perspective supports fully embodied play. I finally get to the main point here. So what do I mean by embodiment and supporting it, a fully embodied sense? And sometimes this is a term that you can stumble over. It's a big psychological idea that comes out of something called theory of embodied cognition. I'm not going to go there. I'm going to try to just talk about it as something that's holistic in this way that I've been promoting with you. So there are different ways. I don't want to make it complicated. So I think this might help you understand what I mean. There's a person named Ruth Levin who said that to embody something means that you have a full body felt experience of that thing, that state, that experience. Look at the full bodied experience this little child is having at the beach here. I just love that picture. Somebody named Rachel Bednarski in 2021 said that embodiment was about finding wholeness, harmony, coherence between all facets and dimensions of yourself. It's the full integration of all aspects of you. And then you see the definition from embodied cognition down there if you're interested. Next, I want to turn my attention to the very important part of this presentation, which is your role as a teacher, or those of you who are in teacher education and preparing teachers. You can think of it this way. So understanding the philosophy behind fully embodied play and what that means in a holistic sense, let's think about what the role of the teacher would be. So first, the role of the teacher is to observe and to come to know each baby as an individual. And this follows along with individually appropriate and understanding child development. But you need to understand typical child development for many reasons, and I won't go out into all of them today, but in particular, if you want to support play for infants and toddlers in the first 3 years of life, it's important to understand their changing needs and motivations related to how they explore the world. So I've got 4 little images here. I talk about this, the ages of babyhood. And this refers to, I'm still talking about typically developing children. So, and stressing that typically developing children have a wide range of normal. So what you'll see when I put up ages, like for this first, the young infant, I say birth to about 6 months. I never give an exact age because all children develop at their own rate. Coming from the child's perspective, this child might say, I'm at one with the environment. I have 4 needs and motivations that are in circles there. And you'll notice that the security circle is the biggest one because all of the psychic and mental and physical energy at this time of life is focused on security. If we look at mobile infants, about 6 to 8 months to a year or a little after, I am in an environment with other people and other things. My energy is focused on discovery. Yes, I still have needs for security. Identity is beginning to bud. I want to try things out on my own, so autonomy is important. But I am all about discovery. The toddler, 10 to 14 months to about 2 years, focuses, they might express it as, I am a person. And I am about autonomy, doing things on my own, me, me, me. In fact, my nickname is a toddler, and still to this day in my family, I'm known as Mimi. It's all about me. You've all seen that. The 2, their energy is about identity. They have come to, they might express it, I am this person. This is what they've come to understand. And they start addressing the things that concern who they are in very particular ways. So this shows, the bigger circle shows where most of that psychic, cognitive, physical energy is placed. So keep that in mind as we go along. Role of the teacher is also to prioritize relationships. So if you think about, along with the ages of babyhood, these ideas come from my understanding of developmentally appropriate practices, but prioritizing relationships is critical. It's important for the teacher to understand who that child is as an individual if they have taken the time to engage in that dance with the baby and develop that relationship that's based on trust and understanding. So, of course, it's important to engage with all, pay attention as a teacher to all the relationships between you and the other adults, between you and all the children, between children and children, but prioritize each individual relationship between you and the baby. So the role of the teacher is also to identify play affordances. This is one of those other kind of tricky words. So let me pull it apart a little bit for you. Affordances are something that allow the possibility that something can occur. So like in the case of fully embodied play is what we're going to talk about. Affordances refer to how we perceive environments as being, allowing us to afford to meet our needs, afford our needs. Ask yourself, here's a question you can ask yourself, and maybe this helps you understand it. What needs to exist in my environment for me to address the needs and motivations of the babies in this space? So here I name a few, and then you can think of these as affordances. Relationships, I've already said, uninterrupted time, organized and appealing space, positive emotional climate, opportunities for interaction, knowledgeable adults, play materials. You could name a list of things that you have in your environment as well as those that you need to have to meet the needs of the children. Let me focus for a minute on play materials and what I mean by that. So these are very important affordances that fall into the category of play materials. Toys are what you think of them: balls, blocks, dolls, rattles, etc. Resources are broader types of affordances, like some I mentioned: space, relationship, but could be furnishings, art and music supplies, types of equipment like a climber in the classroom or a stump to climb on or a boulder in the play yard. So the role of the teacher is also to provide an appropriate level of support to the child during the play experience. So I think of this as along a continuum from fully baby directed free play at one end to teacher guided play at the other end. But in the middle, there is something I call baby and teacher shared play. And this is equally important. Perhaps none of them are more important than each other, but they are important to understand. So this may take the form of parallel play, where you're sitting down next to a baby and you are doing the same thing they are doing. It may be scaffolding, which might be using some encouragement, a well-placed question, handing the baby a toy or a tool that they might use that might further what they're doing. Could be modeling. You look over, you notice the child is watching what you're doing, and you use that as an opportunity to teach them something or show them something. And then on the other end, teacher guided play. By that, I'm talking about things that you do directly. It may be because they're probably not going to discover something on their own, no matter how well you've laid out the environment and what you've given them. And maybe they need a little push, like, here, try to use a brush instead of that, whatever they have, and see what you think. Or a teacher communicates expectations about what's appropriate that might keep a child safe. You must wait, please. And you wait until your friend comes down the slide. Otherwise, you might get hurt. That's a very directive comment, but it's not meant to stifle a child's ability to explore the environment or to feel a sense of agency. Finally, a very important role of the infant toddler teacher is to continuously observe, reflect, and plan with intention. So for this, I'm talking about, and you probably do it. I know you do. You take notes, you collect anecdotal records, you take pictures, you sit down and you write notes about what you were feeling and thinking, those aha moments that you had with a child. Do this with intention. Do it regularly. This is a big tool in assessment and sharing with parents, but also in helping you set up the appropriate play environment and play experiences for the children in your group. So let's talk about the planning part. Hang on just a second. So I've talked about a lot of things that are involved in the role of the teacher, and that's a lot of hard work. Don't let anybody tell you differently. Working with babies day in and day out is challenging. And so I use this quote. I was reviewing a book by my friend Susan Recchia in the US, and she talks about how infant toddler care and education is, quote, physical, mental, and emotional work. It truly is. Don't let anybody diminish what you're doing. It's very important. So let me present some ideas and tools that might help you in this very important work, but give you ways to organize your work. So first, I want to have you think about key domains of development that we want to foster and encourage and support when we're doing fully embodied play with our infants and toddlers. So I'm just going to include 3 of the most important that I believe are the most important: the cognitive, learning and development and well-being, social and emotional, and physical. And each of these, again, from the child's perspective, I have a statement. Cognitive, I learn how things work. Social and emotional, I learn who I am and how I feel. Physical learning, I learn how to move and do. But underlying all of this is its own domain, literacy and communication. The child might say to this, I learn to understand and to be understood. I consider the literacy and communication going across, interwoven with, and enveloping all of the development that occurs in the child during this age. So although we spend time in the next few slides looking at cognitive, social, emotional, and physical, as separate beings, none of them are separated. I just want to show you ways that you can address these things specifically. So I just put this up to remind you that young infant is about security. That mobile infant is about discovery. Toddlers are all about autonomy, me. And twos are, I am this person, and I know what I want and what I'm going to do and who I am. So with that in mind, I'm going to offer my first suggestion about something that you can use to help you plan. Now this one, it's appropriate, I want to say, to keep specific areas of growth and development, specific typical development in mind through the ages of babyhood. I'm going to show you what I used in my book, but you can find benchmarks and these kinds of timelines in any kind of development book or online. So here you're not going to have a chance to look at this, but I divided into young infants and different cognitive, social, emotional, and physical. Mobile infants, again, the three major domains. Toddlers, and then twos. And I'm going to focus on the twos a minute so I can show you how you could use lists of benchmarks and these kinds of things. So I'm sorry. What I do want to say that's different about this one is, again, I do it from the language of the child themselves and how they learn. And also I've divided the first 3 years into 4 distinct categories. So let's consider something from the social and emotional category here. So this child might say, from their own words, my feelings are very strong, but I'm learning to control them. The teacher can say, oh yeah, that's what this kid's about here. That's what's going on here. Looking at the cognitive development and learning domain, 2-year-old might say, I can hypothesize and predict things, predict what might happen in the future. Don't forget they're capable of doing that and foster that and help create experiences that allow for that. And then just an example again, the physical domain, the 2-year-old might say, I can build structures of varying heights and sizes. They're very capable of actually intentionally building. So these kinds of lists just help you remember what they're all about. So I'm going to use this grid to show you a way that you could plan intentionally for fully embodied play by brainstorming play materials that you could use to support the 3 different domains. Again, cognitive, social, emotional, and physical. In this case, I've selected different toys for toddlers. So we focused on twos for a few minutes. Now I'm going to focus on toddlers. So I've looked at my lists about what they can do and understand at this point in time, a toddler, and I've picked a stacking toy on the shelf to support cognitive development. And I'm helping the stacking toys on the shelf for the child to find themselves to sit down on the floor with and work on themselves or next to you. A resource I might suggest or have thought about is in terms of my affordance that I have for this is that I have a good carpeted floor area with low organized shelves. In terms of the toddler's social emotional development, I've got hats and purses and colorful scarves. And my affordance in terms of resources are mirrors and dress-up area for toddlers. And so they can see themselves, baskets they can put the dress-up items in, things they can hang the dress-up toys and hats and purses on. And this helps. And as you can see, I interrupt myself. You can see that all these things hit the physical and the cognitive while I'm targeting the social and emotional. So it's that fully integrated sense of that fully embodied notion of what you're doing here. That wasn't well said. I am showing how fully embodied play will go across all areas of development and learning. So finally, a push toy I have put out for the newly walking toddlers so they can walk behind it. And the resource I might consider is, do I have a purposeful space big enough to maneuver through, for them to maneuver through without disturbing others and bumping into their friends? Here's another way to plan that you can think about using the ages of babyhood and understanding developmental domains. And in this one, let me click on here. I've chosen a name of a material. In this case, I used baby dolls. And I decided to target social and emotional. Now, I've done these in workshops and with my own students and teachers I work with, and they can pick whatever toy they want and whatever domain they want to work on. But I ask them then to go through, and I'm not going to read them all, but to go through each age to say, okay, how would I use baby dolls with young infants to promote security? They're all about security. So I might use soft cloth baby dolls that they can snuggle and hold, provide comfort. Mobile infants have plastic dolls that are in big tubs or baskets, and they have different features. I may say, look, that baby has a belly button just like you. Yes, that's your belly button. You know, being with the child and playing with them. Toddlers, I love the baby washing activity. We do so much here with a small group of toddlers. And making sure I have supplies for each of them. I don't expect them to share the supplies. They bathe the babies, they wrap them up, they dress them, and they do this with some autonomy, but working alongside their friends. Remember, this is social emotional category. Twos, it's about identity. I make sure that in the dramatic play area and the housekeeping area, we have baby dolls that represent all ethnicities and genders. That they can have items that they can pretend they're feeding and carrying and taking the baby out for a walk and putting them down to sleep. So finally, I go to a reminder to you. And again, this is a US perspective example. I don't expect you to follow everything that I'm talking about here in terms of books, but I prepared lists, and for the book on play, I prepared lists with my co-author about how to support 3 different areas of development within each area of development. For instance, I know that's confusing. Under cognitive learning and development, we talked about how to construct knowledge and understanding, how to facilitate thinking and problem solving kids, and how to inspire my thing is covered, inspired approaches to learning. And so we picked books that support those things from our own book lists. One that I like. So let's say we want to promote social emotional learning and development in the category of connecting me, my baby, to nature and science. And I identified books that would go across that 3-year age period. Please be sure to have plenty of books and start thinking about them purposefully, identifying, okay, how am I supporting some part of this holistic being of this child by choosing this book? What does it help me do? What does it help them achieve? More importantly, how does it help them feel? Okay, so I've come to the end of this. And what I want to do just in the next minute or so, and then I want to go open the floor to a discussion. But I have 3 things for you to think about. And please, if you want, jot them down. If you're watching this as a recording, just stop it at the end of this slide and spend some time reflecting, if you would, if you feel comfortable. What are your personal takeaways from what I presented in this talk? Is there anything that you would use? Is there anything you may think about or do differently now in your own practice? And then do you see or think about something today? Did you see or think about something today that you might want to share with your colleagues? How would you take this back with you into the room if you're on break right now, if you're having a lunch break? How would you take this back with you and say, oh, yeah, it was interesting. It was about play, but what was it about? What was the message that you take away? And then let me give you a minute, Maria. Let's, I'll say when a minute's up, to put some things in the chat if you feel so inclined, or to put questions in the Q&A.
Mary, while they're just pondering over your questions, I just want to say aroha nui, warm thanks for sharing your time, your presence, and research and practice wisdom with us today. In terms of the first question about takeaways, maybe I'll just give a little prompt to encourage others to do the same. But I love how you opened us up today by asking us to consider the challenges of being a baby today. So this immediate regard for the very young child or very young children. And I also appreciated your use of the puzzle as a metaphor to remind us to think broadly about connection and interconnection. So I think for me, that's what's come out of your talk. Also, I think it's really clear that teachers of infants and toddlers in your country, but also in ours, continue on this journey of enhancing practice against the backdrop of complex challenge and change, but also possibilities inspired by research such as yours. So it's been an honor to listen to you today. And now I would like to transition to opening the floor. I'll see if anyone's got any responses.
Let me interrupt you just for a second, Maria, and just put this last slide up, and then I can close the slides if you'd like. Just to show, if you want more information, there is a short article coming out in your own journal, the First Year's Journal, and I encourage you to read it. And then I know I'm shamelessly showing my book, but if you are interested, there you go. I'm going to stop sharing. Is that okay?
Yeah, bring us into the picture.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you for those comments. I'm sometimes reluctant to dwell on the problems, but I think it's the problems that help us identify what it is we need to do.
Yeah.
And I wanted problems like the children not getting our full attention, or children not having the full opportunity to do what they are capable of doing, and of teachers not being able to or shown how or learning about the capabilities of young children to the point that they can share, can have these wonderful days together. I think that it helps people to appreciate how important those first 3 years are, and what a waste of time just warehousing a baby, the precious time that's being lost. I see that there are a couple of chats and questions here if you want to.
Yeah, there's a reflection from Eleanor in the chat. You can see that I am reflecting on how to make infants visible, particularly within birth to two spaces, and your diagram lies at the heart of the message of what I'm trying to convey. The link to planning are wonderful examples to work through with the teams. So
thank you, Alina. That's helpful to me. I take it from this that you are probably an infant toddler professional yourself. I don't know if that's definitely true.
And
she is.
Yes.
And I think I really like how you phrased how to make infants visible. I think that we have so long neglected. I think I've already said it, but it's a waste of their time, and it's a waste of your time in those in your program. They have every right to have days that are full of happiness and challenges and things that are interesting and puzzles to solve. Even the youngest infants, they have a right to have a full life each and every day, not just in preparation for being able to read by age 6, but just to enjoy each and every day.
There is a question in the Q&A, Mary, that I want to share. So it's from Melinda. And okay. Melinda is interested in your views about the ways we might better understand the child through play beyond their individual selves as a relation to all things in the natural world. So the other part of that is how can we foster their embodied connectedness and responsibility as relations through play.
This is wonderful, Melinda. I love this. You are a good thinker here. I think, and Maria and I are in a group that's looking at and studying in some depth Froebelian, Friedrich Froebel's notions of the child, the young child. And one of the things he talks about, and maybe Melinda, you're a Froebelian, I don't know, but you talk like somebody who would appreciate Froebel. Don't you think, Maria?
Yeah.
that he speaks about the unity and connectedness of each and every one of us with the whole world, all of nature. And I see that in what you're saying here. And yes, we can learn more. When I say learn about the individual child, I'm not saying, okay, here's where they are on the cognitive chart. Here's where they are on the physical chart. Here's where I want to know about them in the holistic way. It's so hard to express, but I want to know who they are as a being. You know, this wonderful child in front of me, who are they? And who are they going to become? And how do I help them understand that they are just simply a part in this big, broader world that includes their family, their community, their culture, but also the natural world? That might not be getting at what you were talking about, but I think when we watch the child and we expose them to things in the broader world, we expose them to ideas about how to treat one another. We expose them to ideas about how to take care of the earth. We expose them to ideas about compassion and empathy, that we are nurturing them, not just their mind and their physical selves, but their souls and their hearts as well. I don't know if that even came close, Melinda.
I'm sure it did. Great.
Okay.
Next question, Mary, is from, I think this is Jean. Such a comprehensive presentation, and I agree with those challenges needing to be overcome. One thing I'd like to know more about is the way we can build trust with infants in their first year. Are there any other play items you could suggest to achieve that?
Joan/Jean, because I know that's Jean. Thank you for joining us today. I'm so honored that you came to watch this presentation. There's so much you can do that is playful, Jean, in that first year that I consider more about the face-to-face relationship. It's the responding and reacting that I do, or you would do with your grandbabies in what I'm going to blank on the person's name, when they spoke of the dance, the relationship dance between, do you remember, Maria, who that is? Trevarthen, yeah. Colin Trevarthen spoke about as the dance between mother and child, or between the adult and the child. So you don't need a toy. Your affordance at that point is your ability to interact in a responsive, back and forth, communicative way. The child, even if they're a tiny baby, maybe they're babbling and cooing, or they're just seeing you stick out your tongue, and then they stick out their tongue and you do it again, and there's this back and forth. This is building trust. And I think trust was that part of your question, wasn't it? Build trust. It's saying, I do something. This baby does something. She responds. I must be important. I must be worthy of paying attention to. And you are giving that baby that by doing this back and forth. I consider that play. Play items, there are a million different little items, but the most important item is you for the young baby, the first year.
Right.
Jean, you can catch me in chat or something and say, Mary, you didn't answer my question.
No, that was great. I've got another question here, and it does raise the tension between the role of the adult in infants' play, the idea of interruption versus scaffolding. And the question is, how do you support teachers to notice when and how to move from baby-directed play to shared play? Okay, so anonymous attendee, I see. Welcome, and I'm glad you came, and that's a great question. And this is one of the hardest things that my young teachers that I work with and preparing them to go out to work with infants and toddlers, they struggle with this. This is, again, I tried to background it by saying you have to know that baby. You have to know them as an individual. You have to be paying attention to those cues and the things that they are communicating with you. First of all, I wouldn't move from baby direct. Well, I'm sorry, I read your question wrong. I would say that
I would sit down and join a child who seems to be distracted and looking for something to do, and they are not finding something. And by that, I mean, I would sit down near them and notice that, and maybe put something into their range of vision, or I would put something into their reach. And to me, that's a very non-obtrusive way of being in shared play with them. It allows them then to take the ball. So when I mentioned shared play, I said always at the baby's direction still. I still respond if I'm in shared play. I am responding to them. The only time that I'm doing something more direct is under that direct play thing. I consider scaffolding to be a shared play episode. And again, there's no magic formula. There's no saying that this baby needs it and this baby doesn't. But sometimes babies you'll see they're on the edge of frustration. Mm-hmm. And that's when you might want to enter into something else with them that might bring them, you start doing something next to them that gets their attention. And then maybe they will join in on that play. But you have to be able to read their cues.
Yeah, so knowing each baby and knowing their forms of communication as well seems critical to being able to.
Let me say one more thing about that, Maria, is that I mentioned you see them getting frustrated. A little bit of frustration is good. Mm-hmm. You want them to feel challenged, but when you see that the baby's entering a cycle where they will become upset and maybe kind of spin out of control, and we know that what that looks like, we do sometimes want to interrupt that and teach them something else. I see Justine wants to answer this question. Justine, can she join in?
She's just signaling that it's been addressed. That's okay.
Oh, okay.
And we can move on to the next one.
I'm babbling on. Okay. Thank you, Justine.
She's been very helpful here. So another question from Anita is that I hear teachers say we plan intentionally for tamariki or children, but their interests change so quickly. How can this best be managed?
Okay, so what I was trying to talk about earlier is you plan for possibilities. You can't plan for every eventuality. You know, you can think about, and that's part of the reason that infant toddler teaching young children is difficult. It's very difficult to know what every child is going to need in the moment. You can't do that. So that's part of the individuality and the collective piece. You think about things that might work with this group. What are they interested in? Wow, if I put these chocolate coffee beans in this little can and let them smell it, that might give them something to think about while I'm thinking about what I'm going to do with little Harry over here, who really needs me to do something a little. Again, I'm rambling, but my point is you have to have some things in mind, but then you have to remain open to what might occur in the moment. So you never, lesson plans, we don't talk about lesson plans with infants and toddlers. We talk about plans of possibility. And that's where you sit down on the weekend and say, okay, little Anita is really interested in this. I'm going to bring in 2 books about that have a song and a movement attached to it, and she's going to love it. And then little Tahira is going to want this. But there's no magic formula that I can give you, Anita.
Comes back.
But tell me, what is tamariki?
Children.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
In Māori. And I wanted to leave this one for this point now, but it is a prompt for you, for a response from you. Tahira has shared that in response to the point you made earlier about warehousing children, that warehousing children means they still engage and learn, I assume, but surely a free child learns more. Do you want to respond to that, Mary?
Yeah, I really do, because it's not that children aren't learning. Piaget said to us, you cannot not learn. Every moment of the day, We still are learning, but little children are learning at such a rapid pace. Everything they see and experience, they're learning. But remember what I said about Parashavani, these positive lived experiences. Warehoused children are not, their learning is not optimized. It's not being given, they're not achieving what they could. And you say it there, surely free child learning is better. I totally agree. But they're not learning. You pick up your kid at the end of the day, this 2-year-old has 5 more words than they did when you started that morning. Yeah, they're hearing language around them, they're learning. But is that best? Is that what you would want of your baby or your grandchild? I'd say no.
Yeah, great, thank you. I'll just end with one question of my own, because I think we've gone, oh no. Okay, here's a very interesting question from Dahlia. How to teach obedience to the 4th age children?
I don't speak about obedience, and I understand where this might be coming from. I teach about cooperation, and I teach about helping children learn certain expectations in an environment, but it's not from, and you certainly are going to have a hard time with toddlers and 2s teaching obedience per se. And so this is a hard question for me to address, because my point of view is more about guiding children rather than managing or punishing them in any way. So it's through example, through modeling, through gentle coercion sometimes, to say, giving them a couple of choices instead of too many choices. I'm not so sure how to answer this one, Maria.
I think, Dahlia, this is a really interesting question, and perhaps if I can add something, that it's a good question for a team to discuss, because it does draw on beliefs, assumptions about children, and it's important to unravel some of these ideas and the language that we use with children. So it's a good thinking question to put back to your team, if you're part of a team, and then just discuss it in an open way. We all have different meanings about different words, so it's good to know what's your shared understanding of guidance even. So it's, so thank you for that question. I think we've reached the end of the webinar now, and so I'm going to pass on to Justine, but before we do, I just want to say thank you so much, Mary. Having worked with you in the last couple of years, I've been stimulated by your thinking, the prompts you've given me, and I can see that others have done so as well. So thank you so much. I'm now going to just transition to Justine. Thanks.
Thank you.
Kia Maria, and thank you, Mary, for your presentation today. Your discussion's a really timely reminder for all of us of the importance of fully embodied play in the first years, and that we need to intentionally advocate and plan for play experiences for our youngest learners. And we hope that this seminar will act as a catalyst for our audience to engage in ongoing conversations about and reflection on their own pedagogy and practice in relation to young children's fully embodied play. So ngā mihi nui ki a koe, Mary. Thank you very much. And we're very appreciative of your time and your sharing of your expertise. To our Early Childhood Seminar Series audience, if you wish to share or revisit this presentation, please check out our Early Childhood Seminar Series YouTube channel. The recording of this seminar should be available in the next few days. And we look forward to seeing you all back for our next seminar, which will be in early July. So keep an eye on your inbox for the flyer and registration information. Thank you again for joining us today, and we'll close with a whakatauki. Kia tau te rangi Māori e, o te rangi I tū iho nei, o papatuanuku I tākoto nei, o te tai ao I awhi nei, ki runga I a tātou, tihei mauri ora. May the peace of the sky above, of the earth below, of the all-embracing universe rest upon us all. Take good care, everyone. Ka kite anō.